Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the people who help make this show possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. All right, today is the second half of my conversation with Patrick Cotnoir, who is a producer, talent booker, and co-host of the George Lucas Talk Show, which celebrated its 10th anniversary this year. It started out as a live midnight show with the Upright Citizens Brigade theaters in New York City, eventually morphing to an online show during the pandemic. And post-pandemic, it has been a little bit of both. Sometimes it's live streamed, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's in person and recorded for live streams later. Patrick is also a co-producer of a brand new documentary called I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff Story, which is about the George Lucas Talk Show and has officially come out today on various video-on-demand services, and we'll have links for all of that available for you in the show notes for this episode and in the blog post for the show's episode at sw7x7.com. If you're not familiar with the George Lucas Talk Show, basically, it's like a talk show, sort of, and comedian Connor Ratliff is playing George Lucas in the post-sale to Disney era. He welcomes various guests on the show. They are real-world guests who are portraying themselves, but Connor Ratliff stays in character as George Lucas throughout the interview. There is a sidekick who is apparently Watto from Attack of the Clones and portrayed by Griffin Newman very hysterically. And also Patrick has become a co-host of the show as well as himself. All right, so let's go. Let's get into the second half of my conversation with Patrick Cotnoir, who is the producer, talent booker, and co-host of the George Lucas Talk Show and co-producer of I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff Story, the new documentary that just came out today.
So the documentary, it was actually being filmed as early as 2019. So this is also asking you to cast your memory back a little bit. But what do you remember about the genesis of it? Like, whose idea was it to just say, hey, this thing has been going on for 5 years. We should make a documentary about it.
Yeah. So these two filmmakers came to us, actually. We didn't produce the documentary ourselves. I'm a co-producer on it in that I was the conduit between the doc and the show. So that was why I have a co-producer credit on it. But these guys, Ryan Jacoby and Marsh Chamberlain, DM'd me on Twitter and said, hey, we would love to film a show. That was the origin. They said they want to film one show. And we said, sure, great. We could put it online. People will know what the show is. It'll be great. It'll be great to have like a professionally filmed version of this show out there.
Were they already people who were frequenting the show to begin with?
Ryan apparently was. We did not know them. This was just like a cold reach out.
Yeah.
And they made a documentary that aired on PBS, and it was about intergenerational trauma and suicide in the Alaskan culture.
Oh,
like
wow.
Alaskan Inuit culture.
Yeah.
So it truly could not be opposite ends of the spectrum on what, So they said, we'd love to film a show. And we said, sounds great. Let's do it. We went out for dinner it was probably October or November 2018, maybe something like that. And that was the plan. And then they pitched us. They said, well, what if we also film like a behind the scenes, like a fake behind the scenes, Larry Sanders-esque making of the show? You are George Lucas making this show. And Connor was like, you have to work really hard to make that funny, like, because it has to feel real and you don't want it to be stupid. Right. So he's like, that's too much work, which now looking back, and this has taken 5 years, it's very funny that a short would have been too much work. So he said, but if you want to do like a short behind the scenes real making of it, we can do that. They said, sure. We did a Kickstarter for a short. It was going to be probably 15 minutes, something like that. And then they just did not stop filming. They just kept going. And we hit a point where I think they still wanted to make it a short when COVID hit. And we were like, you've shot 70 hours of footage or something, to that equivalent. We're like, you can't do that. You've got to make this a feature at this point. Otherwise, like, we all just wasted so much time.
Right.
So we did another Kickstarter and that got us to the finishing costs and, everything. And they were able to put it all together mostly during COVID. We did a couple days pickup shoots after lockdown. We had to do like Griffin's interview, and we did a second interview with me, which is, if you watch that doc, there are 2 interviews with me, and one of them I'm a young, sprightly little boy, and then in the other one I am a COVID-hardened old man, and it is very depressing to look at the two photos next to each
other. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it went through a big genesis and just like trying to figure out what it was going to be. And, you know, obviously they were almost done when COVID happened, and it was just going to sort of end on this weird melancholy note of like, I don't know what the show is. This might be it, something like that. And then we have like I don't want to call it a nice coda, but it's a coda featuring COVID stuff, you know, and featuring the live stream and all that, which I think is a nice ending to the doc, because it shows that the show is still going on and still, you know, out there doing its thing, even though it's in a fairly different form than it was before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now that you are, you know, 4 or 5 years removed from the filming of the documentary and seeing it come out, since, you know, a lot of what threads itself through the documentary is Connor and his thoughts about, you know, success and failure, and a lot of this has kind of driven him. Like, how do the three of you reflect on the show? Like, do you feel it's a success, a failure, a still, you know, jury's out kind of situation, or that there are successes to be sure and possibly more down the road ahead?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. I think we all feel, you know, good about the show. You know, Connor and I still like doing live streams. Griffin doesn't love doing live streams as much because I think he got burnt out during lockdown, and it reminds him a lot of lockdown, you know, being stuck in front of a computer. So it's like hard to get back into that headspace. He'll still do them occasionally, but he does a lot of live shows whenever we do that. So, you know, we all look at different versions of the show differently. And I think it's nice that this can morph into whatever it needs to be when we're doing it, whether it's just a live show in front of people, or, you know, we're all in a room together doing a stream, or we're all on our different houses on different coasts doing a stream. You know, I'm in LA now and they're in New York still. So I think we all look at it positively. You know, we don't have many negative feelings as far as I know towards the show, but we all still like doing it, you know, when we get around with each other doing it. And it's fun bringing new guests into it and new people who have never seen it. And I think this doc is a good way to, you know, introduce people who have no idea what it is, as to give them at least a brief glimpse into sort of what they can expect with it. But, you know, I don't know how long it'll keep going. I have no idea. I don't think any of us do. I think it'll be as long as it's still fun. And, you know, we may do 3 shows a year. We may do 12 shows a year. Like, we had a lot because of the doc early this year. We were doing a lot of festivals. And I think we did like 7 shows in like 4 months or something like that, which is a lot, you know?
Right.
So I think we're taking a couple months off now just to like recenter ourselves and get back into it. But we'll, you know, we're going to do New York Comic Con, and we'll probably do another New York show that month. And if anywhere else asks us to go visit, you know, we've still never done Chicago. We've never done Austin. Like, there's a lot of, you know,
really
big, yeah, there's a Connor did South by, but that was 9 years ago, probably, you know. So there's still a lot of like big markets that we haven't really hit up, but I think we're all still pretty happy with it. And it's nice to have this as sort of a calling card for the show that you can show people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you done San Diego Comic-Con?
We haven't done San Diego. We do New York a lot just because they're in New York. And it's, you know, it's hard to get them to come out here for a thing that does not pay, which San Diego does not pay you.
Oh, interesting.
We could do LA shows. We probably should do it at some point. We probably will do it at some point, but doing New York is just so easy for them. And I think we've done it 6 years now, 5 or 6 years. And it's nice to have a, you know, like we've had to turn people away the last couple of years, and we've been in like 400 person seat rooms plus. So it's like, I feel bad that people can't get in, but also at the same time, it's like a good problem to have.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So is the future of the show basically, because you are bi-coastal now with the 3 of you, is it mostly, you know, live stream, or, you know, will you, because it's more difficult to get them out to the West Coast, how often do you get back to the East Coast? Like, how often are live shows happening? Yeah,
I mean, we did a New York show in April with the Severance casts with Zach Cherry and Adam Scott and Britt Lauer. We'll probably do one in October. Maybe we'll do one this summer, and we'll probably do one in December. It's, you know, I will fly for whatever I need to fly for. Like if I'm breaking even on something, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. That's the problem though. You know, you're paying for an LA to New York flight and it's like, how much am I realistically going to make on this show? Is this worth it or am I losing hundreds of dollars?
Right.
But I like being there. You know, I like being there in person. And the only one that's really hard to get to is we do like a holiday special show in December. So flying back to New York like the week before Christmas is not a cheap endeavor.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably mostly live shows with Connor and I doing 3 to 4 live streams a year is my guess. We do an Oscar watch along show every year, which is fun. We always try to have like Oscar winners or Oscar nominees on. But my guess is it's mostly live shows that we ideally film or live stream from the theater. And yeah, I don't know, but who knows? You know, things could change tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your most recent live show, which is entitled The Naboo Movie. If folks listening or watching have not seen or heard about it, it is a staged reading of The Phantom Menace in honor of the 25th anniversary, and it just went up on YouTube the day before we are recording this, if I'm not terribly mistaken. So first of all, congratulations on
Thank you so much.
And can you tell me a little bit about how that came about? Like what made you decide we have to do this incredible blowout thing for the Phantom Menace?
Yeah, so I'm friends with the guys who do Star Wars Minute, the podcast.
Yeah,
there's a podcast for people who don't know where they do an episode for every minute of every Star Wars movie. It's been a long, probably almost as long as this podcast. I don't know when they started, but it was probably about a decade ago. And
a little bit longer.
A
little bit longer, because they were actually an inspiration for me to do this and see. At the time, their episodes I think were like 10-15 minutes long, so they were much shorter format, and it was really rare to see a short format Star Wars podcast and for it to be daily. And so I thought, here's something that's different enough that might be worth emulating. And now of course the episodes are a lot longer, still daily most often, but So we had done the George Lucas guys had done that show, I think, for the last 3 movies. We did Solo, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, I want to say. That sounds right, I guess. Those would be the last 3. Yeah. And they reached out because I was in New York and Pete, or in LA, and Pete lives in LA. And it was his idea, and he was like, we want to do this, and I was immediately on board because I love live reads. I love that concept. And just like I'm also doing a lot of casting now. That's sort of one of my new career paths, because talent booking is like a very niche thing that like not that many jobs exist for, so you sort of gotta find where the gigs exist to go to. And he asked if I would be interested in doing it. I said, absolutely. I have 300 people that would be fantastic for this. Like here's an entire list of people that I could get for this. And we just went all in, and it was at Dynasty Typewriter in Los Angeles. For people who don't know, it was a truly insane cast. Haley Joel Osment played Anakin. Bobby Moynihan was Darth Maul and Yoda. Tony Hale from Arrested Development and Veep was Qui-Gon. Lorraine Newman, original SNL cast member, was Shmi. Like Matt Gorley from Conan's podcast was Watto and Boss Nass and the Nemoidian, Newt Gunray. And it's an insane cast. Tawny Newsome from Star Trek Lower Decks was Padme. And it was so much fun, and we had such a good time, and the reception has been so good that, I mean, I'm hoping we're going to do episode 2 soon. We don't want to wait for the anniversary. We're like, oh, okay. I think you got to pounce on it while it's hot, while it's fresh. Right. But it was so much fun, and everyone had a really good time doing it. And they did a live stream of it. But you're live cutting it as it's happening. They were live editing it. So some of the camera angles were not as perfect as I wanted them to be. So I went through and they sent me all 5 camera angles for the entire thing. And I fully re-edited it. So it's pretty much perfect, I think, at this point, that you will like always see the person who is talking, or always like get at the right angle for it. So it's fully re-edited. It's fully, about as good as it's going to get. It's on YouTube. It's on the George Lucas Talk Show YouTube page, but if you go to naboomovie.com, it'll also redirect you to the YouTube, so that's the easier way to do it. Gotcha. And I will link to all of this in the blog post for the show's
Great.
episode at sw7x7.com and in the show notes for the show for everybody who wants to go check this out. I'll make it easy. Is there anything you don't do, Patrick Cotnoir? I mean, you're a co-host, you're a producer, you are a booker, a casting agent, you do video editing. Like, where's sleep? There you go.
Sleep. Take time off. There's a few things. Yeah. I don't know. Look, I like keeping busy, and all of these things are like, everything leads to the next cool thing. And that has always been my philosophy, is like, you may enjoy doing this thing now, you may not enjoy doing this thing now, but you're going to meet someone on that thing who's going to bring you into work on the next neat thing, and that will bring you into the next neat thing. So like, I have a problem with saying no. That is something I don't do. I don't say no. And it's if it's a good time and I'm enjoying myself, like, why would I not want to do it?
Right.
And living in LA, it affords you a lot of those opportunities where you're like, yes, of course I want to do this, because we're going to get insane people to do it, because the quota of insane people here is so much higher than it is anywhere else. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick. So if people want to keep up with what your next thing is going to be, wherever you're going to appear magically and whatever new projects you're going to reveal, where can they keep up with you? And also, while we're at it, where can they get a hold of I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff Story?
Yeah. So you can get the doc at imgeorgelucas.com, which it will have all the information about how you can watch it, any press trailer, whatever you want to do, it's all there. There will be more ways to watch it down the line. I'm pushing for that physical release. I just desperately want that Blu-ray.
Yeah.
You can watch the Naboo movie at naboomovie.com. You can find me patrickcotnoir.com, a website I have and pay for but never plug. My X is at Patrick Cotnoir. My Instagram is at Cotnoir. And yeah, anything I'm working on will be posted to those places. So keep up. That's the spot. And hopefully it'll be something fun soon.
Fantastic. And again, I will link to all of those in the blog post for this show's episode and in the show notes as well. Patrick Cotnoir, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So there you go. That is my conversation with Patrick Cotnoir, the producer, booker, and co-host of the George Lucas Talk Show, and the co-producer of I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff Story, the new documentary that just came out today. And that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please help me help more people add this daily dose of Star Wars joy to their lives. You can do that by just telling people this show is out there for them, whether you're talking to people in real life or online or on social media. You can do that by telling the algorithms to show this show to people who are searching for it with your ratings and reviews and your likes and your comments and your subscribes and your follows and your joins. And you can even help me as an independent creator put this podcast out on a daily basis, and it won't cost you more than a cup of coffee a month, or a couple if you prefer, and you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7x7, and thank you so much for considering it. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.